Okay, connecting. There you go.
Is that a whole lot better?
That is 100% better.
Brilliant.
So how are you, Siku?
I'm good, thanks, Makosi. Thanks for having me here.
I sort of like, I've known you because your sister is like my friend, one of my besties.
Yes.
So when I saw your, because you know, sometimes if people haven't shared their story out there, I always feel there is power in allowing people to share their own story when they're ready to share the story. So when I saw you share the story, I was like, it will be amazing for you to come on to talk about it.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Siku, and I am a mother of two. So I've got a daughter and a son. My son is the one who's autistic, and so that's who I tend to share a lot about when it comes to autism and raising awareness. So single mom, advocate for awareness just to ensure that people understand it and accept it so that autistic people and their families can really have a more fulfilling life. Because once we understand, it means that we're going to be a bit more inclusive with what we're doing, and then, you know, it just opens a lot of doors for autistic people, should I say.
Okay, so you are a single mom?
Yes, I am a single mom currently. Yep.
Is currently. So, okay, I like that. Is Michael's father involved in parenting, or does he sometimes, do you share time between the two of you?
And parenting, so in and out, but predominantly I am the majority carer, really, of the children.
Do you find it's hard it's hard for Michael to go between parent to parent?
I mean, the father does come to the house, so it's still in a similar environment. So that transition is not there for him. But if it was something that he does on a regular basis, he gets to, you know, adapt to it. And yeah, but at the moment, that's not an issue for him.
Okay. So in one of your videos, you were talking about how you communicate with Michael. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so Michael is nonverbal, which means that he cannot use his words to express himself. So what we tend to do is learn different ways in which we can communicate. And that's what I always like to say, is Michael has taught me a different way of doing things that are not of the norm. So when you're parenting an autistic child, you need to throw away what you would have known as a normal parent. So
right.
how it was with my first child, for example, is totally different with how, you know, I deal with Michael, for example. So communication, I've learned, it depends on where you are on the spectrum. With Michael, because he's nonverbal, so for example, Makaton, which is a form of sign language, and it involves signing and speaking at the same time. So, you know, for example, they're going to say hi, you do that way. And so you sign and talk, because the whole point of it is not only teaching how to, you know, to communicate or sign, but also that in the future, you can learn how to speak. So if somebody says words to him, he's understanding what those words are. And he can also reciprocate and do the same thing. And that's the thing. So you do something, and then you wait for him to respond. So, you know, it's a two-way process, as communication is for anybody. Another way, sorry?
I said, okay, I'm listening.
Another way that we tend to communicate is using text, which is a picture exchange communication system. So you will use pictures. So if you want to show him a picture of a toilet, do you want to go to the toilet? Do you want to draw a picture of fruit? You know, would you like this fruit? Would you like an apple? You know, it's time to go to bed. That particular one is still a challenge. He doesn't quite like it. So when I show that to him, he tends to like push it up. He will try and click on it because he's thinking, okay, mommy's not going to stop. But eventually, he just doesn't quite like that one. So you have to find different ways that work for your child, and you know, accommodate that with them. So again, it's just when we're in the house, he knows where everything is. So he tends to just go and do stuff by himself. But it's always, the whole point is to just make sure that he can communicate outside the home, because that's where we find the challenge is. He doesn't know where stuff is. So, you know, it's important that, like, for example, he won't tell you when you want to go to the toilet when we're, let's say, in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has issues with using public toilets.
Okay,
So,
you've brought about an important point. Now, in Africa, I know a lot of families that have autistic children, but they almost hide their autistic children. They don't go out with their autistic children. They go out with every other family member, but the autistic child is left at home. So you just mentioned about public toilets, meaning you go out with Michael when you go out for meals and everything.
yes, I try to take him out as often as possible because he also wants to be included. You know, you can see it on his face. Sometimes if I have to, and I do take different times out with my daughter to just do something separate. But with Michael, when we go out with Michael, you have to do a lot of risk assessment. So you have to know where you're going, what kind of place it is. You know, is it conducive for Michael? Is it a garden? Is there a garden? Or are there so many children? Because you have to understand what triggers him and make sure that you can eliminate those triggers.
How old is Michael?
Did you ask how old Michael is?
Yes.
Michael is 8 years old. So you find that, you know, you just can't get up and say, let's just go fancy going out for a meal or something. It has to be planned, you know, from start to finish. So you have to know what you're doing, where you're going, what kind of food is served there, and things like that. So there's a lot of risk assessment. So when you're going out, public toilets. Now it's you mentioned a fair point where you say that autistic children are hidden.
Yes.
Or they're left at home. Now that's why we like to advocate for inclusion. So inclusion
Right.
is really, really important because once you start including and you think about autistic children as you're setting up a restaurant or setting up a shop or anything of that sort, you're thinking of what kind of things would affect autistic people, and then it makes it easier for us to bring our children out. Now, I'm not saying it's because that the world hasn't accepted autistic people that we leave it. That does play a huge factor because you tend to think of where you're going and you're thinking, no, that's not going to be a conducive place for my child because it's a trigger and that could lead to a meltdown, and that's a different ball game that you really don't want to get into in public, because they get, like, for example, Michael's meltdowns can be pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
He does have challenging behavior. So if there's something that triggers him, for example, children's noises, that really sets him off. If you don't remove him from the situation early enough, that will result in a meltdown. And a meltdown could be throwing himself on the floor, hitting his head, you know, trying to hurt himself or trying to hurt whoever is around him. So, you know, it's quite distressful, and you don't want that. And you try so hard to try and manage that from happening. So you have to really, really pay attention to your child when you're out there, when you're out in the open, or even just in the home. You have to pay attention and see, is he reacting? You know, like, I know what sets Michael off. So if I just even hear a baby crying, I'm like, oh my gosh, what? You know, where's that baby? Like, what's going to happen? But one thing for me, I think, defenders. Ear defenders are a must-have for me. I cannot leave the house with Michael without ear defenders.
Like
It's
ear defenders are like noise cancellation headphones.
like noise cancelling. Yeah. I had them with me, but I had to just leave them to come and get some networking.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, they're like noise cancelling headphones. So if
Mm-hmm.
you like noise cancelling headphones and they can listen to music, by all means, go ahead and do that. Michael
Right.
does when you put music on the headphones, he'll take them off, thinking like, oh my God, what is this? He just likes it quiet. So you find that I cannot move without them. They're just a lifesaver for me. So when we are
Uh-huh.
out, we will have the head. He even knows himself when he's out. He'll put them on, especially if he feels like there's going to be, if he hears some noise that he's not comfortable with, we'll put the
He
ear
puts them
defender.
on.
They are hypersensitive. He's got sensory processing needs. So what you and I will maybe hear as a very low sound noise, for him is heightened to a point where he can't, when he can't control, he can't process it.
Mm-hmm.
He gets into sensory overload, and then it then goes down into a meltdown. If you don't catch it before it gets into a full-blown meltdown, then that's when the challenging behavior comes in. And it's when he's in a full-blown meltdown, for example, with Michael, we just have to leave him alone until he calms down. So to some extent,
Can I
I can.
ask? Can I ask? Sorry, can I just interrupt you? Does Michael go to school when there is no lockdown?
So that is another topic that I was going to discuss in one of my videos. Michael is currently not in school.
Okay.
One of the reasons was that the school could not manage his behavior.
Wow.
So that's why I talk about his challenging behavior, because he then had severe challenging behavior. So the school just did not understand his needs. And as a result, again, that was another fight that I had to get into. So when sometimes we're dealing with autistic children, we're constantly fighting because they're a voice. So, so that's something I got into with the school, and he was finally excluded from school, permanently excluded, which I got reversed because I don't think it's right that for them to do that. It's his needs. He doesn't have that behavior because he chooses to. He has it because it's part of his autism. Autism comes with
Right.
autism comes with meltdowns, and depending on where you are on the spectrum, they are different. And when it's nonverbal, sometimes it can be severe.
Is this a special school that said we can't have him, or is it like a normal, like is it a school for autistic children that could not take
Yes,
him?
it's a special school. He's been there from nursery. So it was just trying to understand what then changed in the school that created that challenging behavior. And it's only now that, he's out of the school, his behavior, things have changed drastically. We are able to manage it, able to manage his meltdowns, and you can see a difference. You can see a difference in him. It's like he wanted to stay at home, but
Yeah.
so it was a special school, but now, working with the local authority, working with the social services and the council and everybody, we managed to get him back into school, but that's only for September. So homeschooling is not necessarily new to us here when you deal with as a result of COVID.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So
Because I was going
COVID,
to ask that.
no, it's not only for the older child who's struggling a little bit because she's missing out on the social interaction. But yeah, so with Michael, he's been at home, but the only challenge with COVID was everybody was at home. So that broke his routine. So he functions on a routine. When you break
Right.
that routine again, it could result in challenging behavior. So challenging behavior is not something that happens every day. It happens because something has triggered him.
I was
So
going to ask a question. How is his relationship with his sister?
she's really good with him. Um, So she understands him. She understands his needs. We've all really adapted and learned how to manage Michael. Um, and how to live with autism. because it's just changing the way you do
Right.
things. So she's really good. They like the
Yeah.
hard. They was, I always laugh and say, "Oh, you take better pictures with Michael than I do." He doesn't engage in my pictures. He's just like, "Oh, here goes mommy wanting to take selfies."
Another
So
question I want to ask.
yes.
How old was Michael when you found out he was autistic?
So the journey of discovering his autism he was about 15 months when I realized he wasn't hitting certain milestones. Okay.
Okay.
So, and it was just at that time, and I know we're not meant to compare siblings, but you can't help yourself sometimes. And you're just like, but his sister was doing this, the normal, the bubble, the copying and all that was happening. But then when I went to the doctors, they said, let's try speech therapy, because that's one of the ways that you can tell. One of the early signs really is the lack of speech, you see. So we tried speech and language therapy. That continued on. I had to move towns because that's the time then I was dealing with my separation. I moved towns for personal reasons, and then we had to kind of start that all over again, because different councils work differently. So then we started that process, went to the doctors, they'll try all the tests, audiology, because they want to rule everything out before, you get that diagnosis. So it could be a little longer than, just looking at him and saying, oh, this is the situation. So they have to do a process of elimination first of other, potential conditions. So he was diagnosed at 4, around that time. Yeah. So by then it was pretty clear, you're just waiting for the doctors to say it, and they have to do their due diligence and do everything that they need to do. So by that time, I already knew that he was autistic, because I do have friends who've got autistic children. So I could see certain traits and certain behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So,
If
and
you
sorry, go
don't
on.
mind me asking, did you finding out that Michael was autistic put pressure on your relationship?
No, we separated before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, separation had nothing to do with Michael's condition.
Okay. So now what for Siku? Like what are you putting in 100% into the awareness for autism? And how can we find you? How can we support you? How can we support the work that you're doing?
Well, I don't know, I can say 100%. Autism is pretty much my life.
Right.
So for me, it's an everyday thing. And I advocate about it. It's not just because it's April, it's Autism Awareness Month,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just, on occasion, I do fundraising for autism awareness. So that
Mm-hmm.
could be either here in England or in Zambia. I'm
Zambia.
Zambian,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and because you mentioned about how Africa relates with autism, and I think
Yeah.
here, not like we have it under control, but the support is there. The support is
Exactly.
there for autistic parents and
Mm-hmm.
autistic people here
Mm-hmm.
in England. So, so when I do fundraising as well, I try to also aim and target Zambia, because when I speak to autistic, that's how I am. You can follow me at Siku Muyonda on Instagram or Facebook. I do post I do advocate there as well. And like here, this is really it's brilliant. I'm so happy that you invited me to come on today,
There is
really.
autism schools in Africa. And if you know any autism schools in Africa, let us know so that we can put them out and just encourage parents out there who have autistic children, and have them send their kids to school, and how every little helps. It's even if it's awareness for you, like April is about to come to an end, just posting something on your platform about autism, and just letting parents who have to deal with autism know that they are not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. This is me just signing out for Makosi today.